Thanks for joining me in another video about Skyrim Requiem, the role-playing overhaul mod. And this is a little bit different video. It's not going to be gameplay footage. It's more of just an overview of where my character is sitting now at level 20 and where I want to take it in the next couple levels going forward. So I just finished off the Kynesgrove Dragon, which I think pretty solidly puts me into the quote-unquote mid-game section now because I'm starting to be able to handle the tougher enemies. And so because of that, I want to have kind of a plan for how I'm going to level my character going forward, because while a lot of the early enemies have become kind of trivial, like bandits are not much of a threat anymore, Forsworn are also not too bad for the most part, but as I get deeper in, it's going to become important where I put my points so that I can handle the tougher stuff that comes along, especially because I want to be able to do the Dragonborn and the Dawnguard DLC content with this character. So my two core damage skills are one-handed and marksman. In one-handed, I decided to go with a war axe specialization. The alternative would have been to go with maces. Those get a little bit more armor piercing, which is what expertise does. War axes, you get a damage bonus, and not quite as much expertise, but still some. And the main reasons that I like doing a war axe specialization, well, for one, I got the Axe of Whiterun, which is actually the best enchanted weapon I've found so far. It has pretty good base damage, and it does 20 fire, which I just haven't found anything that's going to be better than that. And also the Dawnguard Rune Axe, which I can get eventually. I've actually never had a chance to use it in Requiem, but I'm guessing it'll be really good against undead because it gets powered up with more and more sun damage as you kill more undead with it. So I think that'll be great later on when I want to start doing stuff like Dragon Priests. It also doesn't take any enchanting charges, which is a cool thing. The main case for using maces instead would be to do something like the Mace of Molag Bal, which is also a really strong item, but the fact that it has mana leech and stamina leech doesn't really do a whole lot for me because my stamina is usually not much of an issue and I'm not really casting any spells. Also, having to do the Daedric quest would probably involve murdering someone, and then I'd lose my ability to have divine blessings. And right now I have the Agent of Mara going on, which is giving me an extra 50 health while I have the blessing from the shrine plus 5 magic resist, which is pretty useful, and I don't want to lose that bonus. So I'm kind of straying away from doing any Daedric quests that involve killing anyone. And marksman, I've put quite a bit of cash into training that up, which is why it's higher than one-handed. And since I'm doing light bows, the ranger perk is really excellent. It gives me more mobility. It makes a lot of enemies pretty easy to handle. Once I hit 60, I'd like to be able to take quick shot. It's better for heavy bows than it is for light bows. I'm not really a big fan of the eagle eye perk. I just don't use it that often. The marksman's focus is nice if you're doing something like a sneak archer build, where you want to be able to pick off targets from afar. But really how I'm using the bow with this character is just to get an opening shot in from sneak, and then after that, it just becomes like a mobility weapon. It's also my main way of killing dragons. So really the perks that I care about are the ones that come up here to get more expertise, aka more armor piercing. And I'll probably end up taking quick shot if my perk points allow it. So then evasion is my main defensive skill. I decided not to take the dodge perk just because I find it kind of awkward to use. And usually just with my character has such good movement speed that I don't really need it. And one interesting thing about evasion is most of the perks within there are actually offensive perks. So like they give reduced cost of power attacks, give better damage while running, which is really cool, more damage with power attacks. So while this is in theory a defensive skill, it's actually giving me a lot of offensive bonuses too, which I think helps make up for some of the lack of damage that I might have from using one-handed. And you'll note I haven't put any points at all into sneak, and that's because the Khajiit they effectively get the first sneak perk for free. So if I were to level up stealth, then it'd basically be a one wasted perk point because the first one is repetitive with what I've already got, and there's a pretty big trade-off. And I find that if you do a stealth character, it's all or nothing really, because once one enemy is alerted, then your stealth becomes totally useless. So it's really a trade-off. If I've done other stealth characters, but if you do that, you don't have enough perks to take stuff in the one-handed tree, and I'd rather just be able to get in like one sneak attack and then fight them straight up afterwards, which is why there's not going to be any perks going into sneak for me. Lockpicking, I feel like taking at least one lockpicking perk, either that or you have to use alteration, but it's kind of a necessity. But just the fact that it's so easy to level up because you run into chests along the way, it makes it's basically free. I think for this particular character, I've never taken the treasure hunter perk before, but I think I'll do it once I'm able to get there, because since I'm doing found items only, I'm not going to craft any of the items that I use. Having a higher chance to find stuff is actually pretty helpful. Pickpocket, I just find it kind of boring. I don't like doing thieving characters. You just spend a lot of time walking around the cities and doing nothing, so that's not my thing. If you enjoy it, more power to you, but I'm not doing it on this particular character. Speech. So I think the haggling perk is pretty much like I take that as one of my first 3 or 4 perks in every character, because otherwise it's so hard to sell anything. And I'm trying an experiment. I'm taking some of these voice perks in speech, and I think I kind of want this one so that I don't get disarmed as much by dragon shouts. I think that would be handy. So I expect I'll take a couple more there. Hopefully there's some payoff. And okay, I'm not doing any alchemy with this character, so no perks are going there. Similarly, for the magic skills, if you're not doing a magic focused character, you can basically pick one of the schools of magic to supplement your other skills with, because otherwise you just don't have enough magic to do it. And I chose alteration because I like that it has some kind of passive bonuses. One thing I've considered doing is going into conjuration and just taking the novice and apprentice nodes, because then you can get the spectral warhound, which is a really helpful companion to have along. You get to summon a really fast moving minion that can distract enemies. It'll take out archers for you. So for us, if I was doing a slightly less tanky character, I would for sure be doing that. But as it is, I'm using pretty much all my mana in combat when I do alteration. Similarly, restoration has some really handy perks. Like, it would be nice to have the passive aura to do health regen. So if I was like finding myself having extra perk points, I might drop one in restoration and level that up. But that's something that it's a pretty low priority, because I think I'll be pretty perk hungry as I get higher level. So my plan within alteration, as soon as I get it to 25, I'll probably train it up as soon as I hit level 21 and take apprentice alteration, take magic resistance, and then that'll make me quite a bit more tanky against a lot of different sorts of attacks. And over the long run, getting up into here by, like, for example, the spell armor perk looks awesome. That plus Savior's Hide, plus if I eventually get the Shield of Solitude by doing the Wolf Skull Cave quest, then that will be really excellent. I'll be nearly immune, I think, after getting all that with the mage armor perks and that for the really late game content. But it's going to take a very, very long time to level up alteration all the way. I'll probably be investing a lot of my gold into trainers for alteration. Enchanting, again, I'm not taking any perks there. I might put just one there eventually so that I can use soul gems for recharge, but I think I can work around that with scrolls. I haven't really been using any enchanted items so far, so that hasn't been a high priority. On the smithing side, so I'm not actually going to create any items to use, so stuff like the draconic blacksmithing, I'll probably take it eventually just so I can make arrows to fire. But my plan here is I want to eventually, pretty soon actually, I'll take the arcane craftsmanship perk. You can buy the tome for that from Calcelmo, so it's pretty easy to get. And the idea behind that being, then you can craft silver arrows of fire, which are great against Draugr and, more importantly, vampires. I think vampires will otherwise be very difficult unless I have some silver arrows of fire to shoot them with. And then later against like the enchanted spheres and the Dwemer constructs, being able to go into the dragonbone arrows of shock will be extremely strong. but right now I've just done elven smithing so I could improve the gear that I found. I'll take the glass smithing perk eventually. I'm hoping to find a glass war axe because that would be a nice gear upgrade for me once I eventually find one. Those are pretty rare, and I think my best chance is once I start fighting vampires that one of them will drop one for me. I also don't really know where to find a glass smithing book, but I'm guessing as I continue exploring some of the higher level areas, one of those will drop. So not doing any heavy armor, obviously. Block, I just took the first perk point here to make block a little bit more effective. I might go up along this side because, again, we can get some more elemental resist while blocking, which I think will be good against both mages and against dragons. And then if eventually get into those, it'll probably take a really long time because block isn't a very high priority because this is such a mobile character. I'm just not getting hit all that often. So that's the big overview for the character. And just a note on one-handed versus two-handed. I think the advantage of two-handed is you get much better burst damage. I've done another two-handed character where you can just knock out some of the big enemies really, really quickly, but the downside is that your resistances are much weaker. It's harder to gear, so that's why I wanted to have one-handed on this particular character. And while I've been kind of aiming to restrict the power of the character by not taking any of the alchemy or enchanting effects, like normally for most of my Requiem characters, my alchemy would be my core because you can make a lot of money that way. I've decided not to do it with this one just to keep the gameplay a little bit more fresh and more action-packed. But one of the nice offsets of doing that is all my perk points have been going into my combat skills almost, with the exception of just the lockpicking and the alteration perks. Those are the only ones that don't really benefit me in combat. So relative to other level 20 characters I've had, this one has actually been quite a bit stronger. I think it'll start to become harder as we get into the higher level content where like the Dragon Priests and the Dwemer, where it might start to matter more that I'm only using found items, but we'll see how it goes. So thanks for following along this far. I'll be continuing this series, and hopefully it'll stay fresh and interesting for everybody. Thanks.